next day. Berry, Dolly, Flutter and Balthazar were sitting by the lake, throwing pebbles into the water. Berry hit a floating log a couple of times, and his friends clapped. "Come down to the meadow now. The spring sports day is about to start," Stanley told them all. Their forest friends had already gathered in the meadow. The little beetles all put their running shorts on and stood in line. They all ran as fast as they could. They had to run 3 times around the meadow. "It's not fair! Eddie cheated! He cut the corner!" Leapy the grasshopper shouted. "There's to be no cheating. Let's start the competition again, but no cheating." Stanley came first, Leapy came second, and Balthazar came third. Berry finished last. Balthazar and Eddie started whispering.
"He's as slow as his snail."
"Don't make fun of him. It's not nice," Dolly said angrily. "Now it's time for the high jump. The one who can pick the highest apple is the winner," Alfonso said. The friends took a run and tried to jump as high as possible. Leapy got the highest apple, Flutter got the second one, and Eddie the potato beetle grabbed the third apple. No matter how hard Berry tried, he couldn't even reach the lowest apple. "I can't do it. I just can't do it," he sulked. "Come on, Berry. You'll be better at the next race. Don't be sad," Rosita said. But Berry was too nervous to join the rolling race because he was frightened he'd crack his shell. The others all lined up and rolled from one end of the meadow to the other. Dolly was the fastest and she won. "Now let's start flying," Alfonso said. "The fastest to fly to the top of this tree and get a pine cone from there is the winner." The beetles started immediately. Flutter, Balthazar, Dolly and Zephyr all joined the race. Flutter was the fastest and got to the top of the tree first. "I can't fly either," Berry snivelled. "Don't be so angry, Berry. It's time for the skipping competition now. The fastest skipper wins." The 4 contestants started skipping. But suddenly, Berry got tangled in the rope and hurt himself. The others were worried and ran over to him. "I'm not doing any more silly races. I can't do anything. I'm going home." "We have to think of something. We have to cheer Berry up," Dolly said. "You're right. What's he really good at?" Rosita asked. "I know," Flutter shouted. "Throwing!"
"That's a super idea," Balthazar agreed. "Berry was the only one who could hit the log in the lake." They made 5 piles. The first one was made out of apples, the second of horse chestnuts, the third of pine cones, the fourth out of hazelnuts, and the 5th one out of pears. Dolly convinced Berry to come back to the meadow. "It's time for the throwing competition. Do you want to join in?" Rosita asked. "Hooray! Throwing! Of course I'm in." Everybody had a go, but Berry was the best. He was the only one who managed to knock over all 5 piles. "You see, Berry, I'm the best runner. Leapy's the best high jumper. Flutter's the best at flying. Dolly at rolling. Rosita can skip the fastest. And you're the best thrower. Everybody's good at something," Stanley explained. Berry got a beautiful shiny chestnut engraved by Alfonso, which said throwing, first place. The missing nuts. "Hello, Berry. Hurry up. Let's go and see Reggie Squirrel. We really should say goodbye to him before he hibernates for winter," Dolly the ladybird said. Berry put on his hat, scarf and gloves, and the 2 friends made their way to Reggie Squirrel's home. Their friend the squirrel was sitting on a branch in front of his home. We wanted to say goodbye before you snuggle up to sleep through the chilly winter, Dolly shouted up to Reggie.
Why don't you come up for a glass of juice and a quick nut snack? Reggie suggested. Look at all the yummy food I've gathered for winter. My pantry's full.
But oh dear, to everyone's surprise, the pantry was completely empty.
Oh my! Where have all my hazelnuts and walnuts gone? Where are my delicious pine cones, acorns and raisins?
I think this might be where the nuts rolled out, Berry said, pointing to a little hole in the corner of the pantry. Someone's been chewing the tree trunk, Dolly said in surprise. And I think I know who it was, the little snail added. Don't worry, Reggie, we'll catch the troublemakers and find your nuts.
And don't forget the pine cones and acorns too,
the squirrel added. The two friends headed towards the big meadow. They heard loud laughter as they got closer. I knew it was them. They're always getting into some sort of trouble, Dolly whispered to Berry. I'm sure they're doing something naughty right now, Berry added. Someone chewed a hole in Reggie Squirrel's tree trunk right outside his pantry. And now all of his nuts are missing. It was you lot, wasn't it? Berry asked. But we didn't mean any harm. We were just chewing the bark like we always do, and we didn't know that his pantry was on the other side, the smallest bark beetle explained. What can we do to help? Come with us and we'll find the nuts that rolled away. We haven't got that much time. It could start to snow at any minute. We'll never be able to find his food in the snow, so hurry. They all took a close look at the tree trunk.
The nuts all rolled out here and then they fell to the ground and carried on rolling down the hill,
Reggie explained. The gang of friends found Reggie's goodies in a pile at the bottom of the hill.
Hooray!
Reggie shouted with delight.
Would you please bring all the food back to my home while I patch the hole up in my pantry?
Reggie told the bark beetles. They carefully placed the hazelnuts, walnuts and acorns back in his pantry. Berry and Dolly gave them a hand. They worked as fast as they could, but it got dark very quickly, and they still had a huge stack left at the bottom of the hill. We'll never finish in time, one of the bark beetles sighed. We could really use some extra help, another added. Berry the snail suddenly sprang to his feet and left in a hurry without saying a word. He was soon back and had a trumpet in his hand. He blew it so loudly that everybody could hear it. Soon all the friends in the forest gathered. Dolly climbed up on a big boulder and told them all what had happened to Reggie Squirrel's winter food supply. All the nuts rolled out of the hole. We've got to take the food back to Reggie's home. If you all help, it can be done before dark. Ready, set, go, Berry said, and he lifted a nut from the pile. He gave it to Dolly. She handed it to one of the bark beetles. The bark beetle gave it to the bee handed it to the dragonfly, and so it moved back up the hill to the squirrel's pantry. By the time the moon appeared in the sky, all the hazelnuts, acorns, walnuts and chestnuts were safely stowed away in Reggie Squirrel's winter home. Reggie happily put the last nut back in his packed pantry.
Thank you. I'm so glad I got so many good friends. It's time for me to tuck myself up in bed before it starts snowing. See you again in spring.
The grateful squirrel yawned.
April. Bouncy Castle. It was April, and the pigeon brought the ants a parcel. Who sent it? The children asked. My friends, the red ants, sent it from the forest next door, the queen ant explained. They opened the sizable parcel to reveal a bouncy castle. Hooray! Let's blow it up! The little ants cheered, and they all started to pump the colourful contraption. The castle soon grew to its full size. The queen ant asked Dr. Owl to call everyone to the meadow. Hey, everyone! Come and jump! Come to the ant castle! Dr. Owl shouted. No one wanted to miss the chance to bounce on the castle. The only one to miss out was the snail boy, who had gone to visit Snail Sam. Soon after that, the sky darkened and a storm began. The little beetles all ran into the ants' house. Then the rain turned to hailstones, and all the little pieces of ice punched holes in the bouncy castle. By the time the storm had passed, the bouncy castle was as flat as a pancake. Just then Berry arrived home. By now it was too late for him to try the bouncy castle because it had completely deflated and lay flat on the top of the hill. "I miss the bouncy castle," Berry said with a sob. "Don't be sad. We'll stick it and blow it up again," Dolly reassured the snail boy. Berry did not say a single word, but just set off home with his head hung low. Then he got straight into a hot bath to warm himself. He got his bath toys out, but even his favourite whale could not cheer him up. The others all thought hard how they could make Berry happy again. "We could make our own bouncy castle and put mattresses on top of each other," the bee suggested. "That won't work. They'll all slide apart and we'll all fall off," Stanley sulked. "We could stretch a sheet between the trees like we did when the kite escaped," said Flutter. Not bad, but we've done that before." "Anyone got a new idea?" Dolly asked. "I have," shouted Bubble. "Once, when Dolly's flowers dried out, I asked a friendly cloud to make some rain. Maybe this time I could ask it to let Berry jump on it for a little while." "But Berry can't fly. How will he get up on a cloud?" Balthazar puzzled. "We'll take him up," said Dolly. And so Bubble flew up to the largest cloud and discussed the plan with it. Meanwhile, the friends all hurried to Berry's house. "We're going to take you bouncing," Flutter told the snail boy. "Just hold on tight," said Dolly. And they picked him up and flew up high in the sky. The cloud happily let Berry bounce about on it and then waved to Dolly when it had had enough.
"I think that will do for now."
The little friends thanked it for helping out and then flew Berry back down to the ground again. "That was really super, thank you," Berry said with a grin, and he hugged his pals. It took the ants several days to mend all the holes, but they eventually finished. And this time, Berry did not miss the chance to have fun with the others.
The Big Wheel. The Ant Queen had been ill for a long time. She had caught such a terrible chill that she was in bed with a fever for weeks. When she eventually got better, the ants decided that they would surprise their queen and celebrate her recovery. They thought and thought until one of them shouted, "Let's build a big wheel! There, on the hill! It can turn around nice and slowly, and we'll be able to see the whole of the forest from the top." "Oh, what a super idea! But we don't have much time." "No, we haven't got a lot of time. It will be Sunday in 6 days, and then the Ant Queen will parade through the forest on the conker cart. We need to be ready by then." The ant army got to work.
They started to saw and hammer as they followed the plan. They worked hard and the big wheel grew larger by the day. But the last day soon arrived, and then the last night. "We won't be ready," one of them said, sounding sad. "Let's call for help," said another ant, and they sent the news out into the forest that anyone who could should come and lend a hand. Berry, Dolly, the spider, Stanley, Balthazar, Leapy and Eddie all came along. But no matter how hard they worked, they were still running out of time. "Thank you for coming along, but we're still not going to be ready by tomorrow morning. We need much more help." The moon could see what was happening and felt sorry for the ants. He gave a little whistle, and the sleepy stars gathered all around the moon. The forest friends stared in awe at the starry spectacle and set back to work with renewed energy. And with the stars' help, they were finished in no time at all. The ants also built a motor for the big wheel, and that made the massive wooden wheel move round and round. When it was finished, everybody tried it out. "Thank you, moon! Thank you, stars!" the ants shouted. But by then they had gone off to twinkle far, far away. The next morning, the Ant Queen sat in Harry Hedgehog's conker cart and rode away on a parade around the forest. They arrived at the hill and could not believe their eyes. "We built it for you!" the ants all shouted together. Then they told the Ant Queen how everything had happened and invited her to take her first ride on the big wheel. They did not have to ask twice, as she happily took her place and went round and round again. Dolly's flower. One spring day, Dolly the ladybird was planting a flower in front of her house when Bubble the flower beetle appeared. "Will it grow big?" he asked Dolly. "Yes, it will grow into a big bush covered in flowers." By the time summer arrived, the bush was covered in flowers. Everybody who passed by took a deep breath of the sweet scent. "It's beautiful," said Flutter admiringly, and so did Berry, Balthazar, Stanley and Bubble. By the middle of the summer, the sun was at its hottest. Dolly was busy watering her flower when Christopher the Canary delivered an invitation to her door. "It's from Katie. She's invited me to go and visit her." And she sounded very excited. "You go, Dolly, and I'll water your flower." "Thank you, Bubble. I'll be away for 6 days. Please water my flower every day, otherwise it will dry out." "I won't forget, don't worry," Bubble promised. Bubble dutifully watered the flower the next day and the day after that, both morning and night. He passed Flutter's house on his way home. The butterfly girl was busy painting her roof yellow. "I'd like to paint my house too." "I've got plenty of paint left. You can have some if you like." "Thank you."
He started painting his house first thing the following morning. He was so busy painting that he forgot all about the flower for the next couple of days. He only remembered again when Dolly came home and knocked on his door in floods of tears. "Bubble, my flower's all dried out." "Oh, I completely forgot," the flower beetle exclaimed. The two of them stood next to the wilting plant. They watered it, but it made no difference. The bush's branches drooped sadly down, and petals lay scattered on the ground. "Rain is the only thing that can help here," Stanley the stag beetle announced. "A real summer shower that soaks the soil." "Come along and rain again, so the leaves grow big and strong, and the branches good and long. Come and rain all night and day, come and rain so we can play. Come and rain and never stop." But it still did not rain. Bubble really wanted to cheer Dolly up. He thought hard about how he could make things better. Then he suddenly had an idea. "Dear Cloud, sprinkle a little rain on our forest. Dolly's very sad because her flower has dried out."
"It's getting late and I'm sleepy. I'll do it tomorrow," the cloud said drowsily. And with that, the cloud closed its eyes and fell asleep. When Dolly stepped out of her little house, a fat drop of rain plopped into her hand. "It's raining! Hurry! It's raining, Berry! It's raining!" It rained more and more. Dolly and her friends had never been so happy to see it rain. The bush stretched a little and lifted up its drooping branches. It opened up its flowers once more and drank the rainwater up. "Look, it's not drooping its branches anymore. It's grown stronger again," said the ladybird girl. "It's not only grown stronger, it's grown bigger." Bubble gathered up handfuls of flower petals and flew up to the cloud. "Thank you." And he sprinkled it all over with the scented petals. The Star House. One summer evening, Berry and Dolly were sitting playing cards in Dolly's house when they spotted a bright light over the hill. "What was that?" Berry asked. "It looked like a shooting star." "A shooting star? Let's go and take a closer look," Dolly suggested. Berry and Dolly held hands and walked in the direction of the strange light. "Look over there, Berry!" The little snail boy's mouth fell open in surprise. Right on the top of the hill stood a house the shape of a star. "Where did that come from? It wasn't there the other day," Berry whispered. "You stay here and I'll run and tell the others," Dolly whispered back, and she flew off to tell Balthazar, Flutter and Stanley. When they were all together, the group of friends crept slowly towards a peculiar house. Stanley knocked on the front door. A shy girl popped her head around the door. She had long hair that sparkled with tiny stars and golden wings that glistened in the darkness. Berry was the first to speak. "Who are you and how did you get here?" But the girl didn't say a word. "Can we help you?" No answer again. The girl just stood there and said nothing. "All right then, if you're not going to speak, then don't. Come on, let's go home." "Wait a minute," Dolly said. "Perhaps she can't speak." "She can't speak?" the others asked back in amazement. Dolly picked up a stick and scripted a star on the ground. Then she handed the stick to the girl. The little girl reached for the stick and started to draw. "A little harp?" Dolly asked, and the little girl nodded. You've lost it? Flutter asked, and the little girl pointed to the window. It fell out of the window? The little girl nodded again.
I don't understand,
Balthazar grumbled. I understand, Dolly said. She lives up in the sky, but she dropped her harp out of the window, and she's come down here to look for it.
Then let's help her,
Balthazar suggested. Don't worry, we'll find it, they all told her, and they hurried off into the forest to search for her missing instrument. I can't find it, Berry said with a sorry sigh. I've looked in all the bushes.
I can't find it either, and I've looked absolutely everywhere,
Balthazar added. I'm going to take a look higher up, Flutter told them, and she flapped up into the trees. Here it is! Here it is! I found it! The little butterfly girl soon shouted. Flutter lifted a little golden harp out of the canary's nest. She carefully handed the harp back to the star girl. The little girl flew back into the house and closed the door. She lifted a sparkling star out of her hair and gave it to Flutter. Is that for me? The little butterfly girl asked in surprise, and the star girl nodded. Then she sat in the window and started to play her harp. And as she played, the star house began to lift higher and higher. She's flying up into the sky, Dolly said with her eyes wide in wonderment. Soon it looked as tiny as all the other twinkling stars in the night sky. It's a shame that she had to go, Stanley sighed. Flutter took very good care of her twinkling star. She kept it in a little box and only wore it in her hair on very special days. It always reminded her of the little girl playing the harp in her star house, high up in the sky. The hot air balloon. One summer afternoon, a storm blew up in the forest. Dolly the ladybird and Berry the snail sat watching it from the spotty house. The wild wind twisted the trees and blew the roofs off houses. The rain came down in buckets. When the rain and wind finally stopped, the two friends took a look around the forest. Look, Dolly, the wind blew this tree over, Berry said. And the rain washed away my flowers, Dolly sighed. Leapy the grasshopper came rushing in. Dolly! Berry! Come quickly! Someone's lying in the meadow! The friends found an oil beetle lying in the meadow. Oh, what happened to you? What's your name? Who are you? Dolly sputtered. I'm Adette the oil beetle. I live up in the mountains, but the wind blew me down here and I hit my head really hard. My wings are weak and I can't fly. I don't know how I'm going to get home, the oil beetle sniffled. They lifted Adette up and carried her into Leapy's house. Don't worry, Dolly said eventually. We'll help you get home. That afternoon, Balthazar the bee, Flutter the butterfly and Stanley the stag beetle all came to see Adette. They tried to think of ways to help her get home. The best thing would be a hot air balloon, Stanley said. But what could we use to make a balloon? Berry asked. We could use blankets, pillows and sheets, Flutter suggested. And curtains and towels too, Stanley added. They got to work immediately. They stitched all the blankets, curtains, sheets and towels together. It took a while to get everything finished, but Adette helped as much as she could. Every day she was feeling stronger, and even her head had stopped hurting. It's ready.
Thank you,
The oil beetle replied happily.
Hooray! We're flying!
Berry exclaimed.
Wow, it's beautiful! We can see the whole forest from here.
Dolly laughed. It started to get dark. When they eventually arrived, Adette cried out,
Hooray! I'm home. Thank you. Please stay the night and watch the shooting stars with me. We'd love to,
the little friends said. Adette quickly made them something to eat and gave them delicious cakes and tea. After dinner, they all sat down in front of Adette's house and waited for shooting stars to appear in the night sky.
Hooray! I saw a shooting star! Berry exclaimed excitedly. Me too,
Dolly said. And me, added Stanley. They went into Adette's house when it got colder and sat and watched the stars through the window. They all made a wish and fell fast asleep. As she slowly drifted to sleep, Adette wished that someday she would meet her new friends again. Kindergarten. One autumn morning, Dolly knocked excitedly on Berry's door.
Come quickly, Berry, or we'll be late.
Berry got ready and the two friends held hands and walked to the nursery together. Lots of little children were gathered in the playground. They were all so happy to see each other. There was Balthazar the bee, Flutter the butterfly, Stanley the stag beetle, Eddie the potato beetle, Zephyr the dragonfly, Alfonso the cricket, Leapy the grasshopper, and Bubble the baby beetle. Mrs. Bumblebee patiently guided everybody into their classrooms. The little, middle and top children went into different rooms. Bubble was in the little group. He waved to Berry and Dolly from the doorway. The day started with exercises. After breakfast, the children made beautiful pictures using the leaves they collected in the woods. When everybody had finished, Mrs. Bumblebee gathered the children in a circle. She taught them lots of songs and games. The children all danced around. Then it was playtime. Mrs. Bumblebee sat in a rocking chair and watched the children. Berry and the boys ran straight over to the car box and started playing cars. They built ramps and tunnels.
Can I join in, boys?
Dolly asked. She was holding a broken red car.
Oh no, Dolly, you can't play cars with that old thing,
Berry told her.
And anyway, cars are for boys, not girls.
That made Dolly cry.
The boys don't want to play with me,
she told Flutter. Flutter, Leapy and Zephyr quickly cheered her up.
Come and play with us. We're playing with dolls.
The girls dressed their dolls in pretty dresses, fed them and rocked them to sleep. Dolly liked this game a lot. Then Berry got into an argument with Morris the Maybug.
You keep knocking my car over. It's not fair. You're a cheat,
Berry shouted.
That's not true. You're a cheat,
replied Morris.
That's it. I'm not playing with you anymore,
Berry said sulkily and left the boys.
Can I join in your game?
Berry asked his friend Dolly.
You can't play with us. It's a girls' game,
Dolly sulked.
But I brought this doll with me. It's got curly hair. I want to play with you. All right. Come and play with us. But now you have to let me play cars with you.
Children, time to wash your hands, Mrs. Bumblebee shouted. Then go and sit down at the tables. Mrs. Earwig, the dinner lady, dished up their dinner. When everybody had finished eating, Berry and Dolly collected up all the plates and glasses. Then the children had a little lie down while Mrs. Bumblebee read them a story. They all listened in silence, and a few of them fell fast asleep. When they got up, they all had a snack and went out into the playground. It was enormous and filled with all kinds of slides, climbing frames and swings, with a big wooden train in the middle. Berry and Morris quickly made friends again and played on the swings together. Dolly helped Bubble up the slide and caught him at the bottom. Bubble liked that a lot. The rest of the day flew by, and soon the children were waving goodbye to each other. They couldn't wait for tomorrow to come.